Hi, my name is Monika Siler. I was born in Germany in the town with the name of Würzburg in 1947, 2 years after the war.
And so, being born in Germany right after the war, what are some of the earliest memories you have growing up?
Everything was rubble, bombed out, there was no food, there was no milk for babies. It was a very hard time for the people in Germany.
For you and your siblings growing up, what was day-to-day life like living after the war and the aftermath in Germany?
We were living in a basement because everything was bombed out. And I remember having cardboard on the windows in the winter time. And it was freezing cold in the basement all the time. There was very little food. There was no gifts for Christmas presents. But we had each other and we didn't know any better, so we were happy.
So yeah, I know you mentioned that food was really scarce and hard to come by. So what was your average diet, or what was like getting food like for you growing up in that?
Each family after the war got rations. So you got, depends how many kids you had, you got that many loaves of bread. Maybe, I don't remember ever getting any milk, but we got meat, and it was horse meat. So, and it looked like the American ring bologna, and it was delicious because we were hungry. Everything was good. So yeah, and there was no school. Everybody just tried to build up their places and help their neighbors, and the German people were happy and sad all at the same time. They were happy the Americans came to rescue them, but then when they looked around and everything was bombed, it was a hard time for a lot of people. And all the agony of Hitler killing all those Jewish people, they were feeling guilty because they let their leader guide them where they didn't really want to be. And after probably until I was about 6 years old, we moved out of the basement into a house. My father was a builder, and he was able to scratch enough supplies together to refurbish an old little shed, I think it was, and made a house out of it for us to live in it. So that was exciting, but that took many years to do it.
Was a lot of buildings and like that, infrastructure in Germany like that, where it was just kind of homemade, put together?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people lived in tents or makeshift with sheets and blankets, and it was okay in the summer, but the winter time was tough.
What did the streets look like when you were going down Germany? What would life look like if you walked down the streets?
Rubbles, you had to climb over it. I remember, I think I was 4, and when we moved to the other house, no, I was 6. When we moved to the other house, we had chickens and we had a pig, and somehow my parents figured out how to get them. I don't know how, and we had no food to feed the animals. So we had to go into the bombed out buildings and pick dandelions. And when you were in the building, you would kind of keep your eye open for the top, see if it's falling in and it kill you, but we survived. Could have been worse, I guess.
So you were going through the rubble of the bomb buildings and looking for dandelions and
Yeah.
stuff to feed livestock, was it?
To feed the chickens and the bunnies and the pigs and, whatever we could find. That's what they ate.
And did everybody have like animals like that, or was it more
No.
just?
We were just lucky. But my mom was an excellent baker, and she would exchange food from families, and she would bake breads and cakes, and they would trade off, for food.
I know you mentioned that you didn't. You remember not going to school. So how late was it until people started going back to school and getting schooling and education and whatnot?
I think I went to kindergarten when I was 7. So it was a few years.
And you were born 2 years after the war, so it was give or take, say, 10 years after the war,
Yeah.
about education started coming back. And then what was school like your first time going there in Germany, with it just starting up?
Terrifying. I mean, we weren't in school, and when I finally came to the age where I had to go, I was terrified. It's like, I wanted to be home. I didn't want to be in school. Kind of like Little House on the Prairie.
I know you said you didn't have a TV until you were 12. So what was more your entertainment as a child growing up with you and your siblings?
Playing board games, in the summer being outside, playing with the neighbor kids. In the wintertime, you just stayed in the house and played board games and played by yourself and made up games, or nothing like it is now. No computers, no video games, none of this. We were outside. We had furniture. They probably went hunting down the streets for pieces of furniture we could use. I remember we had one bedroom in the beginning, and all of us kids slept in this one bedroom on bunk beds. So it was pretty crowded in there. And then there was another bedroom built, and then we had another bedroom. But we thought we had a palace when we moved. Got out of that basement. I mean, we had one stove, and we used that black coal. Remember my mom, stoking it every morning, getting it nice and warm before we went to school. And that would heat the whole house. And we had no registers or anything. You just left all the doors open. I remember the window sometimes in the wintertime, it had ice flowers on it, where the whole window was iced up, and you could write your name in it on the inside, so we would be by the window and everybody wrote their name on the inside in the ice. That's how cold it was.
Was there a lot of crime within that period of time? Do you remember? Like, obviously you were a kid, so you weren't exposed, but...
I'm sure there was. I'm sure there was plundering going on, and there's always dishonest people, people who are always going to be in trouble with the law, I'm sure. But we never heard of it. Well, first of all, we didn't have a TV, so we didn't know nothing.
Was there a newspaper?
Yeah.
So is that more your only source of news then, was the newspaper?
Every day, yeah, you got the newspaper.
And did you have access to a radio or anything?
I don't ever remember playing a radio. Because that was a luxury too. But yeah, I do remember now. Because there used to be some kind of show on it. Almost like a soap opera show. And we would all huddle around that radio and we would listen to it. And it was the same time, same day, every week, once a week. And we would sit there, Mom made little cookies or snacks, and we would all sit there and just listen to it.
So obviously, if you compare your life to a kid that's growing up today in America, you had a very dangerous life. But in your eyes, in your perspective, how dangerous was your childhood?
We never thought of danger. We would be outside, my mom used to say, when it gets dark, when you see the moon, you need to be home because there's a guy up there with a big chain. He would throw them down to the earth and pick you up. Man, we were in the house before it even got dark. You know, so stuff like that, but it was a good life. I mean, my father was a very angry alcoholic. So a lot of days during the week were not so good. They were kind of terrifying. But we lived through that too, you know, it's just all what you make of it. My mother passed away first. He ended up in a sanatorium for mentally insane because he was drinking himself crazy. Some bad things happened to him, and he was a soldier. And then he met my mom, and all of us came around. But he had not a very easy life when he was growing up. His parents were killed, and there was three siblings, and they had to find places for all the orphans, and so it was tough. He went through a lot. And the two girls, my two aunts, they had it a little bit better because the girls could work in the house and be maids. That's why most big farmers would take the girls in. They could do a lot of work. Usually the boys, if they were an orphan, they had to sleep in the barn. They got beat. They didn't get treated very well. And I think he was only like 9 years old when he lost his parents. So it must have a lot to do with this, how angry he was and how, I don't know. He didn't have a good childhood. He wasn't a soldier for Germany. He was a soldier for a different country. They were fighting Germany.
So your dad was a soldier fighting against Germany?
Right.
Do you know what country it was he was a soldier for?
Yeah. It's called the Sudetenland. Sudetenland. That's where they came from.
So I assume there was mostly during your time in Germany was small businesses.
Right.
Do you remember a time maybe when you were like super younger before these small businesses started coming back and people started getting back on their feet where there wasn't any business?
The one business, my mom took all of us kids, there was 5 of them, to a grocery store it opened, and it was kind of like Walmart is now. It had everything, you know, but it didn't have everything. It just had food. But it was the most exciting thing. I remember that because we were allowed to buy one treat, and we all had they don't give you bags in Germany to carry your groceries out. You had to bring your own bag. So we all had a little baggie to put our treat in it, and then walking through all them lanes with all this food, and it was amazing. I mean, it was like, wow.
And did you have like a public church you guys would meet at, the community?
It took us 10 minutes to walk to our church. It was right behind our house, and so we went every Sunday. We had to go. But I remember there was nuns. They had I can't remember what they called where the nuns lived, like a monastery or something like that. So the nuns who lived behind us also were our teachers for a while.
And they were very nice?
They were not nice. No. Very, very strict. And you didn't, if you got in trouble, it hurt. And you didn't dare go home and complain because then you get it again. So they could do what they wanted to do because they knew the kids wouldn't go home and tell, you know. Christmas came up for some reason. You know, we didn't have Christmases like the kids have over here. I mean, times were tough, you know. But I remember we got a stocking, and there was candy in there. We got what we needed, not what we wanted. We got socks and underwear and pajamas and maybe a coat or a hat and some gloves, but everything were things we needed. And I remember my younger sister got a baby doll, and I was so jealous. But because she was the youngest, she got a baby doll, and I always thought it was so unfair. You know, I always wanted a baby doll. I never got one. But even So Christmas was exciting and happy, and even though we got underwear and socks, we were still happy. We had good food to eat, and so it was okay. There was also a lot of chaos always on the holidays because of my alcoholic father. If things weren't perfect, then he would flip the table and destroy everything. So, but my mom always made it okay. She was a saint. No other like her. Man, she was a great lady. Always worried about her next door neighbor. Feeding all those people. We didn't have nothing either, but somehow she managed to, I swear, feed the whole neighborhood.
So was it just your mom that was like that, or was community a big thing in Germany?
It was, yeah.
Do you have any stories that maybe aren't yours, but stories that were told to you by people that were older than you in Germany about the war or the aftermath or anything like that?
They didn't want to talk about it.
No.
And I wasn't interested. I was in the age where I wanted to play and be with my friends, and I didn't want to listen to all that old stuff,
Makes sense. And then did you learn about early on, I know now they teach about it now in Germany, of course, but early on, close to after the war ended, did you learn about aspects of the war from the perspective of other countries? Or was that not so much taught in education?
Not until I was a teenager, because we didn't have a TV until I was 12. So the only TV we ever seen was at a neighbor's house or at a friend's house if they had one. But we lived without TVs until I was a teenager, and it was fine. But that's on TV, that we were allowed to watch half an hour TV a day. And that's how I learned about what other countries were thinking and saying and what was going on.
Going off of that, what kind of a Nazi influence did you see personally, say in the streets or through people talking growing up? And how long did it really take for that to start phasing out of society in Germany?
They were talking about most of those families had Jewish neighbors, and I remember the older ladies, they were outside, and us kids were listening to what they were saying, and they were talking about Mr. So-and-so and his family, and the neighbor down the road and his family. They were not there anymore, and they were feeling guilty, I think, and they were happy that it wasn't them who got killed. But it was a sad time, I'm sure. We were kids, we didn't know any better.
So the German people that were just living in Germany after the war, they were more resentful towards Hitler and the actions that happened?
Probably half of them. The other half still believed in Hitler. I remember when I was growing up, I was scared of black boots. Because the soldiers wore the high black boots. And I remember, I don't remember where I was, but I heard black boots coming in. I don't know if it was our house? And our mom told us to hide. And we had a big dining room table, and it had a big tablecloth coming all the way down to the floor, and we all went under there and hid. And I remember seeing the shininess of the black boots. Even though I didn't know what it meant or why I was scared, but there was some kind of fear there, and it wasn't because they were authority, it was just black boots. They did a lot of damage, all them soldiers, to Jewish people and to the German people. So even to this day, black boots, when they come up to here, brings bad memories. And then they have that clicking sound, when they used to salute, they had to click their boots together. Now I remember those sounds, but besides that, there wasn't really, I don't remember anything.
Was there any, growing up, did you see any Nazi propaganda or anything?
No.
Or was it more, so it was pretty phased out?
Yeah.
And was it more something that people pretended didn't happen, didn't talk about, or was it something that was more brought to attention when it was brought up?
I think people just didn't want to talk about it anymore. You know, they were terrified while it was going on. If you spoke up against Hitler, you got shot in the head. I mean, there was no question. And I think it took quite a few years before people trusted the government again, because of all the killings and all the bad things that were going on. So they didn't really want, I think because too, German people felt guilty that they fell for this propaganda with Hitler, and he made everything sound so great, and it was all wrong, you know. People couldn't trust their own mother, their own father. They would turn you in, and it was, I don't know how people survived. I mean, to go through all of this, and then the mistrust, the new government, and there was still hatred there, and it still, I was too young. I don't remember a lot of it, but I know there was a lot of hardship and a lot of heartaches for a lot of German people because of their feeling guilty.
After the war, was there still like a Jewish population in Germany?
Not that I remember. They probably fled the country, but were hid somewhere even after the war, because the Gestapo, I think they were still looking for Jewish people even after the war, and if they got caught, you know, I think the American government prosecuted them, and it was just not a good, it was just a bad war, bad for the people.
A lot of the people that participated in the Nazi regime during the war, were they more prosecuted, or they phased kind of back into society after the war, in Germany anyways?
I think they just kind of, phased away, and the big one, like the commanders and the admirals, and there was quite a few countries they were hunting them down. I think Israel was one of them, but it's just hard to explain if you haven't been through that and grew up with nothing but falling down buildings. It looked like a bomb hit everything. Every building in my hometown was bombed out. There wasn't much left.
I know obviously there was the bomb buildings, but were there other remnants of the war that were still laying around, just that were uncleaned up, or?
It was just mostly the buildings, I think. Because in Germany, not everybody has a car. You know, you have to be kind of well off to have your own car. You don't have enough room in the first place. And so there wasn't, I don't remember seeing a lot of bombed out cars or debris like that. Well, there were still flags with the sign on it, and they were torn apart, laying on buildings or being bombed out with the building. But it was always a scary thing. Even nowadays, when I see something about Hitler, how the people felt, it still makes me very uncomfortable. Like, this could really happen to any country. You know, that the people will follow because they think he's this I don't know, almost like God, you know. It could happen anywhere. Could happen here.
Do you have any stories or experiences with an American soldier, any Americans during that time period?
Oh yeah, I love the Americans. They were handsome young men, and they were always friendly. And I remember we had a swing on a big tree and like a chain link fence across. And I was swinging, and all of a sudden, this black hand came through, and it had a Hershey bar in its hand, and I was terrified. I'd never seen a black person before. And he kept on nudging me to grab the candy bar. I didn't know it was a candy bar, but I grabbed it, and man, I ran like crazy back to the house. And then the five of us, there was only five of us at that time, and we each got two little pieces of the Hershey, because it looked just like it does now. And it was such a treat. And I waited for this guy, for this soldier to come by. And most of the time, 3-4 times a week, he would have a candy bar. And then he would bring us chewing gum, in the yellow little packets. So that was a treat. So I loved all those soldiers, even though I was little. I mean, they were good to us. You know, so I liked seeing them.
And then when you were little, did you like understand why the soldiers were there, or was it more just kind of
Not really.
your daily life?
But I think the soldiers were treated pretty good. And I remember, well, they must be good if people are nice to them. They weren't a threat or anything. They were just, I don't know, they were treated well, I think.
How long were the Americans in Germany?
I married an American soldier when I was 18. So, and they were still there many years after I got married, because we went over to the United States and we kept on getting transferred. So they were there for a long time.
Did their influence remain just as strong, or did it kind of fade out over time?
I think it faded out a little bit over time. They were our saviors, you know. When those soldiers came, they saved us.
How did you meet your American?
In a bar.
In a bar?
Yeah. We weren't allowed. If my father would have known, we would have been in big trouble. But that's what everybody did. There was nothing else to do, so, you know, when you're young, you're 17, 18, and your friends say, let's go to the bar, they have American soldiers there. Well, yeah, you know, that's where we went. And that's where I met my husband. I didn't like him at first. I thought he was arrogant and obnoxious. But, you know, after a while, we kind of got to like each other, so we got married.
That's beautiful. So was there a lot of like mingling between the German citizens and the American soldiers, that you guys socialized together? And
only if you married one. You know, families wouldn't invite soldiers into their house unless their daughter married an American soldier.
Was it common for Americans and Germans to get married during that time period?
At that time, when I was old enough, yeah. Because I think we were also anxious just to get out of Germany, you know, to see the world and go to the United States of America. There was a dream of so many people to go over there. And that's why I think and they had money. You know, American soldiers, they got a paycheck, and you knew you were kind of taken care of if you married an American soldier.
So did most of your family end up coming over here?
Yeah, my mom loved it. You know, she thought that was just it. She always wanted a little house with a white picket fence. and all of us were going to get together, and she had to pick the state. We were going to buy her a little house with a white picket fence, but that never happened because she passed away. So yeah, I remember her. Yeah, always saying, I need a white picket fence, and it never happened. So that's kind of sad, but it was okay. But I remember I was terrified leaving my mom and leaving, my country, and I didn't know. I spoke English, but not as well as I wanted to. But I remember being on that first time on a plane, coming over here, and then you had to go through the border control and all of this, and it was kind of scary the first time coming over here, and especially that I was a German. I had to fill all kinds of, took months for us to get all the papers ready for me to be able to come into the country. But it was the right thing. They had to be careful,
And was he good looking?
I thought he was, yeah. He was cocky. That kind of impressed me, but was a hard worker, took good care of his family. So then he got killed in the service too. So
I assume after you moved to America.
Right. I mean, the two girls were still little. And that's another long story, but he got killed in Seoul, Korea.
Say the day before you moved to Germany and the day after you moved to America, what was life like in Germany compared to how it was in America? What was your immediate
I
reaction?
thought it was great. I was absolutely terrified to leave. But I was married, I had to be with my husband, and saying goodbye to my mom was like horrible. I mean, she was the driving force in our family, and leaving her there, it was hard. It was very hard. I think I cried all the way over here. And I think the first and the second month, I was so homesick, I just wanted to go home. I did not want to stay here. I just didn't want to be here. And then it got better. I would go grocery shopping, buy dog food, and make a dinner out of it because it looked like some kind of beef in a can to cook with, because I couldn't read English that good. So there was no dog pictures on it. It said beef, so I thought, well, and I did. We had a couple of dog food meals, I'm pretty sure.
So you're telling me you cooked your husband dog food?
I sure did. And he ate it. Never complained about it.
Never, not a complaint?
Nope. Tasted good. Had gravy in it, and it was good.
I bet.
It was very strange.
I know you mentioned you didn't speak much English, so how hard was the language gap when you came to America, only being German speaking?
Well, I had partial English, so I knew a lot of words, but I couldn't put it together. But if I listened to the conversations, I picked it up really fast. I picked up the writing really fast. I mean, to write the proper words and spell it the right way. So I was pretty proud of myself.
What kind of cuisines did you have in Germany that are different than what are in America when you moved over here, even later in your life in Germany?
Well, one of the main things in Germany is brats and sauerkraut. And, but the rest of it, we eat chicken and beef and pork. And everything is made from scratch. And when I was growing up in Germany, there was nothing in a can or in a bag. You went to the grocery store, you got your groceries there, you went to the butcher and you got your lunch meats and your meat there, you went to the dairy thing and got your milk and cheeses, you went to the bakery, got your baked goods. Not like it is here now, but now in Germany, it's just like it is over here. There's McDonald's on every corner of the street, there's Burger King, and you think you're in the United States.
Did you ever consider going back, or is it just not something you think about now?
No, there isn't really nobody left. Might have a niece and a nephew in Austria. Well, my nephew lives in Germany. My niece lives in Austria. I have cousins, but not really.
Was there any kind of influence between drug use in Germany, or?
Oh yeah. That's in my own family. My youngest brother, he overdosed and died. So
Obviously you were little, so you're not sure, but looking back, would you say it was more like kind of a serious problem in Germany?
after I got married, yeah, it became worse and worse. There was never a restriction on children couldn't drink. But nobody drank, kids didn't drink. We had less alcoholism there than we do over here. And I don't know if it was because it wasn't denied, you could do it. You know, if you deny somebody something, you want it more, and you're gonna get it. So now, you know, the kids who are 18, they go become a soldier, but they can't go and buy a bottle of beer. That never made any sense to me. Driver's license too. You know, it's not, like I said, even nowadays, not everybody has a car. We have street cars, we have bicycles in Germany. Like I said, American people are spoiled. Everybody has to have a car. And when you live out in the country, you do. But I remember my sister taking her driver's license twice, and she was working, and she saved every penny to pay for that. It was, at that time, what, 45, 50 years ago, it was almost $1,000 to get your driver's license on. And if you flunked, you had to do it all over again. So that's another $1,000. And if you get caught drunk driving in Germany, I don't know if it is still like that, but you will lose your license. You will never get it back. You do not drink and drive.
Say you never went to that bar that night, you never met your husband, you never came to America, you decided just to continue living in Germany. What do you think your life might be like then opposed to how it is now?
I probably would be married to a grumpy old German. And that is something I did not want to happen, because I was always afraid they're going to be like my father. Like there was no way I was going to marry a German man. I wanted this American boy and come over here to the United States. So.
I know you mentioned earlier, when you saw the black American soldier you talked about earlier, he was one of the first black people you saw. This is obviously, it was probably more because of the location of Germany than the war, but is there a lack of like diversity within color in Germany, or was there during the time period you grew up?
Not now. I mean, even when I got married years and years ago, Germany was kind of like the United States. People came from everywhere to live there, you know. I don't think we had green cards in Germany, but a lot of outside people came and live in Germany. Even now, it's I think there's probably from every country there's people living there now. There was a lot of Turkish people, which for some odd reason there was always fights between the Germans and the Turkish. There was Arab people. There was black people. The black people, I think, were more accepted than the Turkish people. I don't know why, when the older ladies would sit outside and talk about, you know, things, and we would always, like, you know, want to hear what they had to say, because they had all the news and all the bad stuff, and we wanted to know. But they would talk about, yeah, this fight happened between this and this person and this person, and police was involved. This happened like a couple of times a week, and it was mostly Turkish people. I don't know why. So something had to be going on, which I didn't care. I was a kid, so.
Because you mentioned how half the population, give or take, was still kind of under the control of Hitler, his influence, because it was so recent. Was there people that were still pushing the agenda of what he believed in?
Well, I'm sure there was. But I remember growing up and a white girl got married to a black soldier. And nobody complained about it or talked about it bad, or that was just the way it was. But when it came, a German girl would marry a Turkish guy, that was a whole different story. It was bad, and this gossip, and I still don't know why this feeling, I don't know why they felt that way, but I never will know, because now everybody who was there died now and is gone. So I don't know. Sometimes I think they were very disrespectful men, and they would harass women. They would be clustered up on some street, and then if some woman walked to work, or they would make comments, and if there was a boyfriend or a husband and they heard the comments, then that's how they got mostly into a fight. They had absolutely no respect for women.
And then, have you ever experienced any racism towards you for being German since?
Oh yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Many years ago. Not so much lately now, but they would call. There was another German girl who was on the same in Fort Carson, and we were both German, and we thought they liked us, but they didn't. They called us Nazis, and go back home, you killers, but you have to ignore it. You have to realize the mentality of some people is just not where it's supposed to be. So, and we ignored it, and it was okay. We got used to it.
But you did experience a lot of ignorance and arrogance.
When you said you were German, that's like, what? I moved here in 1969.
Okay, so close to 20 years after the war ended. So I imagine I could still see that being fresh in people's minds.
Yeah,
you say you're German.
Still there. Even, I'm sure, we live out here in the country. Everybody makes sure that takes care of each other and help each other. But I'm sure in a big city there is more happening, like, well, she's German, she shouldn't have that job, or he is German and he should go back where he came. I mean, I'm sure there is, but you know what, I'm not going to worry about it.
So you never got into like a bar fight with anybody because they called you a Nazi, anything like that?
No, not in a bar. I got into one fight in my life in a bar with another girl, but that was not because of Nazi. I think there's more racism over here than there is in Germany.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people talk about or make comparisons to what's happening in America to what happened in Germany. And obviously it's not the same thing. It's two different countries and two different periods of time. But do you personally see any similarities within the political statement we're in now in America and what Germany was at that time?
I think America needs to come back to basics. Hardworking, caring, believe in God. Now it's all about money though. Who has the most money? That's all it is about. There is just no, there is no empathy anymore in people. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of good people out there and who are still doing great things, but there's also a lot of people who are only doing this for themselves. Couldn't care less about the other people, I think people need to come back. They need to be, they have to have honor, they have to have, I don't know, it's just not like it was when I was growing up. Even kids are disrespectful, and where do they learn that from? I didn't grow up like this. You never disrespected an adult. You know, when you were around adults, you were not heard of. Or you know you got in big trouble. But now, you know, there's no respect. Nobody respects nothing anymore. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody. Some, most, a lot of them. A lot of them, that's a better word. I don't know, people just, I think, priorities, what people have now, is not families and the well-being of your neighbor. The priorities are, how much more money can I make? That's the only priority. And that's gonna be bad for the United States. But it's not just like this over here, it's everywhere in the world like that. So,
The little things you did have, it sounds like you appreciated them a lot more than when people appreciate things nowadays.
yeah.
Which I guess says a lot, yeah.
Yeah. When you grow up with everything, what do you want when you're older? When you already had everything. I mean, there's no goals. If you have everything, there's no goals in your life. But when you have to work for it and know what you want to do, then I think that's a better life. Having goals and working for what you have instead of growing up with a silver spoon. Then you appreciate your freedom. You appreciate the United States of America, because you still have freedom over here. And when people say, you know, they hate this country, I'm super happy that I'm in the United States. I'm totally happy being here. And I used to go back to Germany, visit my relations, but then they started passing away, and so I haven't been back there in like probably 20 years. So everything is built up, everything is brand new, everything that Germany is doing great, you know, financially, and everybody has cars now and vacation homes, and so I think they're doing good now.
Although that you grew up in, what you grew up in wasn't good by any means, it wasn't a healthy environment by any means, you were happy growing up in that environment. Maybe even happier than kids growing up today in America, maybe.
Yeah. We didn't have everything, but we were a family. We were knitted together, you know. And there was always somebody down the road from us who had it worse than what we did. So you gotta keep that in mind, you know. Quit your complaining, you know. Just live the best you can with consideration and love for everybody around you. That's all I can say. Yeah, that's what I would say to people. Be grateful for what you have. Be thankful. If you live by that motto, I think you're going to have a good life. I think in Germany, I mean, people had to rebuild their lives. And I think that's what most German people were focused on their families and on rebuilding their lives. And well, I'm sure if over here, if we were bombed out, we would do, the American people would do the same thing, hopefully. Help each other, you know, especially us living in a small town. I'm sure everybody would help, but let's hope it's never gonna happen. You know, pray for it every day. But German people are hard workers. I mean, they can be idiots too, but they're hard workers. They're very clean people. American people are spoiled rotten. They expect everything free. They want to work a few hours and get paid for a whole week. A lot of American people don't appreciate what they have. And they better start appreciating it, because I think things are going to change. Be happy, be satisfied with what you have, and be good to your neighbor. What more do you want from life?